In this episode, you will learn the top 3 things you think a person new and even experienced to the marathon should focus on that they usually don't.
The number one thing is to actually just appreciate everything outside of your watch. Times are out the window. It was a Sydney marathon. It was the largest marathon in Australian history. And like you said, it was bigger than just a race.
What would make Sydney the best marathon in the world?
Everyone in the world knows Sydney, they know Australia, but they don't know the marathon yet. So you get the race part right, we've already got the destination part right. You run across the Harbour Bridge. There's no better finish line in the world than on the doorstep of the Sydney Opera House.
What James learned after his team did a full upgrade to become a potential Abbott's World Marathon major.
What we achieved in a year is fairly unprecedented. So we have 5,000 people registered for the marathon last year. We had 17,000 register this year. That hasn't happened in Australia, and I dare say it hasn't happened in many places around the world.
A few really interesting insights from the race director of the Sydney Marathon, Wayne Larden.
You will see the best runners in the world coming to Sydney every year. You will see those runners inspiring children, not just children, but everyday people to take that step to become a marathon runner.
And so much more. Hey, I'm Darren D. Lake, and welcome to Running Tips to Master Some of Your Life. Not all of it, because you can't do it all at once. Our goal is to make smart and committed runners, that's you, 1% better each day. See, not all at the same time, just 1% a day. I've been running since 1997. I've completed a marathon in sub 3 hours and done an Ironman in 10 hours. All so you can learn from my mistakes. I have a saying, the marathon isn't twice as hard as a half marathon. It is 2 to the second power. It's exponentially harder, so that's 4 times harder than a marathon. I had the privilege of getting exclusive insider info from James Constantine, the digital marketing manager for Pont3, who delivered the event on behalf of the Sydney Marathon. If you don't live in Australia, you probably may not know that they are now a candidate for the Abbott's World Marathon Major Series, and if chosen, would be the 7th one. There's so many reasons why this is exciting, and not to mention, I live in Sydney, Australia. I have been for 12 years, so all my running friends from around the world might come and see me versus me going out to see them. While James is a sporting event marketing wizard, he's also deeply involved in the running community here in Sydney, Australia. I literally see him everywhere, so much so that he just won his latest half marathon and posted a super speedy time at 1 hour and 17 minutes. Enough from me, let's get into it. So I've never been so far away from a race. I didn't do the race, but I still felt like it was everywhere. And, it's Sydney Marathon, respect. But there's another layer to it, which is Pont3. And, I told you earlier before we were recording that I started seeing more people sign up for the marathon, the full marathon, 4 or 5 weeks before, which is not, and these are hardcore runners. These aren't just regular, this is my first marathon. This is my first race I ever did. By the way, a lot of people heard stories about, this is my first race I've ever done. Not 5K, they did the marathon as their first race, which is crazy. That's how much hype was around it, and you did a great job with it. Just gonna go down the list of all the things that I thought were awesome. The energy from the crowds. I only saw 2 sections of it. I was only at 2 sections, the big sections, and was blown away. I was at Oxford Street, where you had what were they? The drag queens?
Yep.
Performing.
Yep. Right.
Awesome.
With pride.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. My son, 4 years old, was like, oh my God, this is amazing. He was really interested and was like, what's going on here? And then we were right around the finish line-ish.
Yep.
And I got to run with my partner for 500 meters. And it felt big. And I've been around a couple of the Sydney marathons. I've actually ran the half marathon. Was not like that in the past. The app, phenomenal. So I've done 1 Ironman. My partner's done a bunch, and no hate on Ironman, but their app sucks. And it is it's I want to follow my friend, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when I went to download it, I had low expectations, and my partner was like, "Oh, can you download it?" The fact that you can follow people, you had the map, slick AF. No BS. I was like, okay, there's a lot of thought put into this, that just from the app. I'm a tech guy, and I was blown away by that.
I appreciate that.
It's a lot of musicians, they put the green, I don't want any green M&Ms in my rider and backstage. And people are like, why? It's because we want to see if you have attention to detail. I said, because I used to be a musician. And it's not because I don't like green M&Ms. I want to see if you have attention to detail. And when I see the app actually is working right, that's attention to detail. Because you want the experience for the people that aren't running to have a good experience. Blown away. entertainment for the spectators and the kids. Couldn't even get to that because we had soccer with the little one, so I had to take him to soccer, but couldn't even get to that. I saw there was bouncy castles and whatnot. The downhill finish, thank you. Thank you, City to
You're
Surf.
welcome.
I love you, City to Surf, but the uphill finish after you come down, whatever that is, into Bondi, no, like that falls flat and then you got to turn around. No, that's not the way to finish. Like you're dying, and it's like, oh, let's put a 1%, into the wind. I'm always like, I hate this. The logo, I know we talked about that earlier. I like the ode to very Sydney things. We won't say exactly what it is. Go look at the logo. And again, all this coming from someone who has yet to do an official marathon. I've done 2 DIY marathons, and I did a marathon at the end of my Ironman, which I don't count as a marathon. It's literally just shuffling. You're just running and being like, "Ow, this hurts." So I have not properly done a marathon. I did a DIY to 2:59. Literally just ran around the Bay Run 3 times. Did it all on my own because I like doing DIY, and I'm pretty hyped about doing a marathon in the later future. So that's your intro. So we're just gonna get into it. What did your parents / the people that raised you do to help you become the runner that you are today?
Great question. Both my parents weren't distance runners, I would say. Dad ran a couple of halves. Mum was a sprinter in school, but I have no real distance running pedigree through my family. There was just an overwhelming sense of support in whatever I did as a kid. And I played every sport. I played all the American sports. I played basketball, track and field. I didn't train it, but I liked it.
You said track and field.
Thank
you. You didn't say athletics.
No. It's not
Every
athletics.
American that we hear athletics, we go, what are you talking about?
I know who's watching.
Thank you.
So yeah, and then like all the team sports, like cricket, all the codes of football, like that was me. But like I didn't run really until 22, basically, and it was to keep off the beers at uni. So yeah, I mean, like there's athletes in my family, but no one was. I don't think anyone's actually run a marathon outside of myself.
Very, very interesting information, and yeah, it's always interesting where you're like, did someone push or pull you to do what you wanted to do? And I found that, I guess pushing you is, hey, you should do more of it. And pulling is like, don't do it, or like, we're not going to even foster it because we don't even care about it. But it sounds like it was a middle ground with your parents because they did run. So you saw running, whereas no one in my family ran. I just gravitated to it, and I've always gravitated towards it. It was Prefontaine. It was me going to distance running because I ran track. I always liked to run track because I was fast. So I was like, yeah, track made sense. It was the evolutionary next step. But distance running was always this thing that I liked doing, but I never actually did it competitively. And I watched the first Prefontaine, the not Jared Leto one.
Yeah. The good one.
Yeah, the good one. Thank you. Yeah, everyone, every runner's like, that's the good one. And I just remember him being like, let's go for an easy 10-miler at 5-minute pace. And I went, how the hell do you run? And for you non-Americans, 5-minute pace would be about
320s? 330s?
Well, yeah, low 5 minutes is 320s.
Yeah.
310s.
310.
And then high 5 minutes would be about 340.
Yeah.
340 minutes per kilometer. And I just remember being like, how do you run 10 miles at an easy 5-minute pace? Like that blew my mind. So that was my catalyst. But yeah, okay. What are the top 3 things you think a person that's new and even experienced at the marathon should focus on that they usually don't? So you don't have to do the runner's world with the top 3 things that people need to do for the marathon. Like talk about something that's very specific to running the marathon event.
That's a really good question. So I think the number one thing is to actually just appreciate everything outside of your watch. And I know it's so hard to do, particularly for 2023. Everyone's got a watch, right? Everyone knows the splits. Everyone knows the where the K markers are going to be. Everyone's got time in mind. But all of a sudden, I think a couple of weeks ago was a really good example of times are out the window. It was a Sydney marathon. It was the largest marathon in Australian history. And like you said, it was bigger than just a race. It wasn't a running race. It was a celebration of people doing 42.2K who never thought they were going to be able to do it. And a lot of people in Sydney came out and actually supported them in doing that. So that just like human movement aspect of the event for me was very inspirational. I shared a tear or two on the day. We were welcoming people over the line at 7.5 hours. They've been out there in 30 degrees for the best part of 4 hours. Like 3 times, almost 4 times longer than the winners of the race.
Sorry, 30 degrees Celsius is about 80 to 85 Fahrenheit.
It was hot.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is hot. As everyone knows, that is hot. Okay, yes.
Really hot. So I think the number one thing is just enjoy the event itself. That's from a runner's perspective. From an event delivery perspective, number 2 is attention to detail. Understand exactly every single touch point you have with the runner. So the runner is looking for X, Y, and Z. They're looking for a training plan 16 weeks out. They're looking for a community to join. And they're looking for, little bits on nutrition, little bits on hydration. So that's what we tried to do, right? We started up the Sydney Marathon Run Club, both in Sydney and in Brisbane, because we wanted to create our own community with our own brand and have our partners on board. So ASICS, did like the shoe try-ons, and we had Goo there, so you can try the gels that are going to be on course. But like really get those intimate touch points with the audience, because all of a sudden they're thinking, it's not just a race on race day. It's actually something that I can resonate with for, weeks and months leading up to the event. And we saw that on socials. We saw people actually continually talking about not just, hey, I ran 32K this weekend. It's like, I'm 13 weeks out from the Sydney Marathon, and this is something that I never thought I was going to do. And I feel really connected because I have my training plan. I have my run club, my whole run club in Sydney or Brisbane or wherever around Australia or internationally, they're really getting behind it. That was something that I was like, wow, okay, I've never seen an Australian event do it. The American events do it incredibly well. New York Road Runners, the New York Marathon, that is the absolute platinum standard. I've never seen any other road running association or club around the world do it as well as them. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just trying to do something that is already being done so well in America. So that was, number 2. Make sure you have touch points with the runners, relatable touch points, authentic touch points, whenever you can. I think number 3, so I think as well, what we saw this year, there were so many people who firstly never had run a marathon, but that might be runners, right? It might be like you. You run 5K, 10K, half marathon. Oh, I can run a marathon. I'll choose one when I'm going to do it. But there were so many people out there this year that they never, ever, A, considered themselves a runner, B, thought they were going to be running 10K, C, thought they would be running a marathon, and D, thought they would run a marathon in Sydney, which is a little bit lumpy, a little bit New York style. A little bit. Not quite Gold Coast.
Lumpy as in hilly?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit lumpy.
Yeah, New York.
We're in a lumpy city.
Yeah, it's funny because New York, you think New York is flat because it is. Manhattan's flat.
Yeah.
But those bridges will spike it. That's why there's no world records coming out of New York Marathon. It's just an epic one because you touch all 5 barrels.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest damn thing for me as a New Yorker. I lived there for 12 years, born and raised. And it's like, you get to run through all 5 barrels? That's cool AF, So back to your lumpiness. It is a bit lumpy. Yeah.
It's just but again, there's so many people in New York who never think they're going to run a marathon in their lives. They do a New York Marathon, but the New York Marathon's been around for 52 years. I mean, we've been around for 20 years and people have known us for a couple, or most people have known us for a few months because we've grown. So it's sort of like the stories and the people and the faces. We'd never seen anything like it before. Australia has never seen anything like that before, like we did a couple of weeks ago. So that really hit home where I saw this massive pack at 10-minute mile, 12-minute mile, 14-minute mile pace. And they were sprinting across the finish line and I'm a marathoner. I never thought I was going to do this. That was really special. And like I said, those 7+ hour marathons, something else, man. I saw one of the guys, his name was Ben. He was part of the Achilles running squad. And he has 2 guides with him there because, he's visually impaired, so he couldn't see where he's going. He's out there for 7.5 hours, but his 2 guides were holding his hand with tethers for 7.5 hours. Comes across the line, emotions pouring out. I'm like, damn, that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
That was awesome. So, I mean, yeah, that's it. People never thought they were going to run a marathon. Sydney never thought that it was going to have a marathon like this. And again, the World Major candidacy is a big part of that. We are trying to work towards becoming the next World Major, but also just staying relevant for 12 months a year. And like everything that we're doing now for 2024, like that is the priority number one. How do we become something that people are thinking about 12 months a year? How are we in people's minds for 12 months a year? Like London, like New York. People talk about the World Majors 12 months a year. We need to now fall in that category as well.
Right now is the part where I go, hey, if you're not feeling this, make sure you subscribe, rate, share it out with your friends about how amazing this is. Rah, 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 rah. All right. While you should go out and do that anyway, how about I actually give you something that will help you? Is the running, health and fitness, and endurance sport internet too much sometimes? Is it too much conflicting content on how to train right? Or you just don't have time to read and watch the latest trends on how to, I don't know, carb cycle for your next marathon? Don't worry. I'll take care of that for you by showing you how to train, race, and live 1% better consistently. To do this, just sign up for my free newsletter, OPB. I figure out this whole 1% better thing so you don't have to by scouring the endurance sports deepest and darkest corners of the internet. Go to dlatecreates.com/news, all spelled the normal way, to be inspired and motivated on the regular. Let's get back into it. A big shout out to the 7-hour marathon finishers. You know, the 5-hour ones too. No disrespect to you. You know, I saw this Instagram reel, and it was like, yeah, these people running in 2.5 hours. You know, respect. You know, to the pros and the elites and sub elites that can run it in 2 hours. It's like, what about those people that are spending 5 hours? You know, like, and I'm like, absolute respect. My partner, she finished her Ironman 2 hours after me, and I was suffering. I did it in 10 hours, 45 minutes or something. She did it in 12 hours or maybe even low 13s, 2.5 hours longer than me. And I was like, you did 20% more, 25% more. You were out there suffering. Like, it's not like she wasn't suffering as much as me, you know? Yeah. Like, Eliud Kipchoge, you know, he suffers for
2 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah, 2 hours and 1 minute, you know, whereas everyone else is suffering for 5 hours. So, yeah, you got to give them the big shout outs of respect. What would make Sydney the best marathon major event if they get in?
So I think with Sydney, it's about Sydney, Australia. And everyone in the world knows Sydney. They know Australia, but they don't know the marathon yet. I think that's just the missing piece, is bringing something that people know all over the world, like the 6 World Majors, and learning from them. Like, you know, I've been to Berlin as a runner. I've been to New York as part of a race director experience. I've seen what it takes from a participant and a behind-the-scenes view. And we just need to instill some of that culture, and we've got something very special. So you get the race part right, we've already got the destination part right. You got you run across the Harbour Bridge, you finish at the Opera House. There is no, you know, all bias aside, there's no better finish line in the world than on the doorstep of the Sydney Opera House. It was phenomenal on the weekend. Like the imagery, the video, it's just phenomenal. So we've got the destination, we've got Sydney, Australia, and now we just need to implement the race. And I think we did a really good job in year one. So just got to build on that for year two.
Yeah, and I would say, as someone that's been here for almost 12 years, there's nothing like Sydney. Sydney being, you know, this destination that that a lot of people, let alone runners, want to come to, because it is on the other side of the world, but it's still familiar as an American. I call it America Light, Lite, like Miller Lite, Bud Light. It's just more like, you know what? It's got that American vibe, but with a bit of a British flavor. And also, we're on the other side of the world, and we've got all these beaches and pretty decent weather. You know, I'd actually say it's a bit too cool for me. I'd like it hotter. But we also have very warm winters, you know, compared to the U.S. So I'll take both ends. It's the range is here versus New York. The range is here. Very, very hot, very, very cold. Yeah. 100% that this could be the best one for a lot of reasons. I do agree with you, and I'm glad that you gave me some evidence, because you're an insider on that. What would you say is one thing that your team is most proud of in the past race with the new rebranding?
What we achieved in a year is fairly unprecedented. So we have 5,000 people registered for the marathon last year. We had 17,000 register this year. Like that hasn't happened in Australia, and I dare say it hasn't happened in many places around the world to that scale in a 12-month period. So Wayne, who is the race director and the CEO of Pont 3, he's a visionary. So he's like, what are the pieces of the puzzle I need to put together in order to give ourselves the best chance of becoming the next World Major Marathon? So he built his team. He got a lot of funding from Destination New South Wales government. They're our big strategic partners. I mean, if you've got government on board, you can do anything. Yeah, sky's the limit.
Really
so, and you need them. Like if you're going to try and bring an annual international event to Sydney, Australia, you've got to have those big players on board to back you, and you got to have transport on your side to close as many roads as possible. Make sure that participants are getting the best experience possible because you're able to actually close roads. I mean, we shut down the city of Sydney. One of the there's not that many bigger things that you can do than shut down London, New York, and Sydney around the world in terms of logistics exercise. So, I think what we achieved in a single year. Like the numbers are amazing, 5 to 17,000 in the marathon. But I think how the city embraced it, how many more people came out and supported the event this year. We gave them reasons to. We had lots of food, lots of beverage, entertainment on course. We had Nickelodeon, all the fun stuff for the kids. But the way that the city embraced it, we've never seen anything like that for a marathon, outside of the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games before in this country. So that was particularly inspiring. It felt good to be a runner in Sydney that day, whether you were participating or not. Like it was just like, wow, this city is actually embracing running rather than complaining about not being able to go over the bridge to Manly Beach for a swim, which happens for 20 years beforehand.
Yeah. How does Sydney embraced it for an event that is very niche and specific for me? Like, what is it? 1 in 100 people run, I think. Only 1% of society runs. And then of that 1%, only 1% of runners run marathons. Yep. So you got 1% of 1%. And that's 0.01%. Or is it 0.001%? Maths is in my my strong suit at times. But yeah, like that means it's even more special for me because it's this thing that I think is like pride and whatever drinking thing's happening in whatever month is happening, like that all over the world. There's always something where everyone's like, yeah, let's get drunk, and they shut the city down. Like that's all. Like that's a given. Like whereas everyone's behind that. But for something that's like, you got to show up and do it. It's hard. Like it's not as easy as going down and drinking or going to the festival, and partying with your friends. Like, and no shade to that. Like I'm not hating on that by any means, but that's kind of passive. You got to show up and want to run or do or on top of that, do the training to run your best time. And a lot of respect to City for making that work and the people that came out to support it. And I'm getting kind of emotional because I'm like, this is something that I really think that's like super special to me and that it became very special to the city. So I digress on that. What would you say is something you will look to improve, because you're now Sydney Marathon, you will look to improve in the future?
We need to take that next step now. So I think a lot of people are talking about the course. It's proof of concept, right? I mean, you can't go government and say, hey, shut down 20 kilometers more roads. We got 5,000 people running a marathon. You can't do that. They'll just laugh in your face until you go out the door. 17,000 people, okay. You're 1 year away from getting an annual event that's going to bring in 20,000 international people who are all going to stay a week in Sydney and bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the economy.
Wait, 20? It's 40, right? It'll be 40, right?
Well, so 40% of the New York Marathon is international. And I dare say that there will be a high percentage for Sydney.
Sorry,
when we get to that.
The people coming in. Of the 40,000, there would be 50% would be
not from Australia. Correct. Yeah, sorry. So, because we've now got those numbers on the table, all of a sudden you've got a little bit more of a leg to stand up on. So, people are like, okay, I don't like running 9K around Centennial Park. Sure, there was more people supporting me this year, but it's still 9K around Centennial Park. And there's a wiggle there and a squiggle there. And I get it, right? I've run the Sydney Marathon twice. I get it. I hear you. I hear your frustrations. But that's the thing, right? Like you go Transport for New South Wales and you say, hey guys, this is what we achieved in a year. This is what we're looking to achieve next year in 2024. And then in 2025, the whole game changes. So those conversations, that's what we need to improve on. But those conversations are already happening for next year and moving forwards because you have to look into the future. We're going to become a world major marathon. We have to act like it. We tried to act like it as best we could this year. We have to be there next year. Yeah. You only get signed off if the other 6 race directors of all the world major marathons like, yep, Sydney, like that Sydney Marathon looks like the other 6, therefore, welcome to the party.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going to happen.
I'm excited. I'm excited for whatever happens, and we'll talk about the course another time.
You might get the bug. You never know. And New York's always calling. You can always go home.
You know what I said? I actually said when I got into running, I said I want to do New York Marathon as my marathon that I'm going to do proper. So got to do Sydney because I live right here.
Yeah.
I literally live in the city. So, and then I'd want to do New York. That would probably, and then I'd be like, all right, I'm done. But we're not talking about hating on the marathon because but again, 1% of runners do marathons. So It feels like everyone does a marathon, especially when that marathon's happening that week. It's like, oh, everyone's doing Boston, everyone's doing Chicago, everyone's doing Berlin, So I always have to remember that 99% of my audience that is listening and watching, consuming my content is like, cool. I'm not doing it, so I don't feel as bad like whatever. But this isn't a podcast hating on the marathon. We love the marathon. We love the marathon. Everything about the marathon. Do you have any final words for people who are interested in doing a world major in Sydney in either 2024 for the Masters or 2025? Counting chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
Not trying to tell the future, but if we become a marathon major, so like basically, what's your billboard to them? You get 10, 15 words. What would you tell this person that's on the fence?
2024, there's 2 paths. So if you are a marathon and you're over the age of 40, come to Sydney. It's a world championship event. It hasn't been run out of the world majors before. This is the first time it's ever happened. Come and experience
This
Sydney.
is the first world championship.
The first one that's been outside the world, the world majors. So it's never been run out. So it's in Chicago in a couple of weeks' time, but it's never been not at a world major marathon. So that's basically Abbott saying, hey, here's a teaser. Here's the trailer for next year. And that's kind of what it is. So come be part of a world championship in Sydney and see what we're going to be all about in 2025. So that's the age groupers. Everyone else is thinking about doing it next year, in our last year of candidacy, before the 6 get round the table with Dawn Stone, the CEO of Abbott World Marathon Majors, and votes. Be a part of history. Be part of that journey. Say that you actually helped Sydney get across the line. And that's a really special thing. You're also going to guarantee a spot when we do become a world major in 2025. When, not if. And that's, we have to have that confidence.
I like it.
And that, so, like 2025, we all know the ballot process. We all know how hard it is to get to the other 6. If you run next year, you are guaranteed a spot in 2025. So they're the 2 selling points for international people for next year, I'd say, outside of the whole Sydney destination, New South Wales tourism, all that sort of stuff, beaches. Did anyone say 30 degrees? Beach weather?
Yeah. Or it could be like the weekend before and after, which was 15 degrees.
15, yeah. It might be 15 degrees on race day and 30 degrees on Monday for recovery day.
Yeah, recovery. Yeah, you can do recovery swim in Bondi. Yeah.
And I think, 2025, like it becomes something that like thinking about now, we don't really know what a world major is going to look like in Australia, but we know it's going to change the sport. It's going to change the sport for the best. It is going to benefit Australia so much more than 40,000 people, generating hundreds of millions of dollars. For the local economy. It will change the sport because all of a sudden there's going to be a yearly event where everyone will come out and see people from all over the world doing something that is so, I guess, like, when I say healthy, I don't mean just physically healthy. I mean healthy for the city, healthy for like people's psyche, and just seeing like it's bigger than just a race. It's a human movement. Like it's literally seeing this like, it's like a huge parade going through the city where everyone around the world is coming and doing it. And it's like, you don't need to know why. All you need to know is it's a big deal. And it will become a big deal. And New York Marathon, not everyone understands what the marathon is. Not everyone knows it's 26.2 miles, but everyone knows that the city of New York shuts down for a really special day. And there's 20 people deep in Central Park. I was there. I wrestled myself to 8 deep. Like, it was a massive, massive deal. And people were just out there screaming for 6 hours. And I was one of them. And I was like, it's just this human movement thing that you just get swept up in it so easily. So that's what it will do to Sydney. That's what it will do to Australia. And we just want to push as hard as we can to make that a reality in 2025.
All right, now we're going to go to the lightning round.
Love it.
Tell me the story about your first run.
My first run outside of team sport was when I was 16. And I was actually having a bit of a socially hard time at school. And so I used it as like an outlet for my mental health. So I couldn't run around the block. My block was like 600 meters. I used to live in Randwick. So it was like really tough. And I just wanted to run, walk, and just sort of like forget about school for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. And I didn't really care what I did, but that was like my first run. And then you sort of progress to running around the University of New South Wales. That's where my dad works, or still works now, but he worked there as well 12, 13 years ago. And once you sort of like achieve something physically whilst actually not caring about any stats or any water numbers, like I was literally out there just, naked running or whatever you call it. Like I was just there mentally, just doing something. It became like a real outlet for me. And then I found my running friends afterwards. And then I decided to start running a little bit further afterwards. But that's how it started out, was just that mental release.
Please, that's funny. I did it to get in shape for basketball because I was pretty good at distance running and no one else liked running at all. And then I was like, this is really fun. I get to zone out. Like I was running 5Ks at 16 years old. That was like pretty much like the first run I did. Technically no. But I just remember, I remember being excited about going into that flow, and then the runner's high, finding out about the runner's high shortly after. This is before. I mean, Runner's World magazine was out back then. I did not subscribe to it because it was probably $8, and I was like, I can't afford that. But there was no internet, like 16 years old. It was AOL chat rooms. I'm showing, this is 98. I'm showing my age right now. But no, that's great. What's your favorite run or workout? It can be either or. For example, my favorite run right now is, I live in Green Square, Zetland, which is city. It's like the other side of the city. I used to live in Forest Lodge, Glebe, and I just love running straight to Darling Harbor, and then basically sometimes I'll start in Annandale, so I'll do the whole bay run, and then it's just all the bay, all the water, and it's just pancake flat because I come from a track background. I hate hills. Like I don't hate them, but I just the hills just throw all my runs off. Like I want my pace to be even consistent, and it just keeps going all the way to Botanical Gardens.
So I'd say my favorite workout is 8x1K because I know if I'm running 8x1 well, and I can, when I'm running well, I can run that like 10K PB pace. And it's almost not hard because you can throw like 200 jogs in there, or you could do 1 minute standing recovery. But 8x1K, it's like when you nail that, you're running well and you're ready for a 10 or a half. Like that's one of my favorite workouts. It's just such a staple. All the elites do it, but I feel like as a recreational guy, you can still do it just as well as the elites. It's just at your own pace. So I love that workout. I'd say one of my favorite runs is, you can't beat the harbour. We talk about the Sydney Marathon course and the bridge and the Opera House. Like I get to run that every day working in the city. Like it's literally, on my doorstep at work. So I step out into the most beautiful city in the world, and I get to run around the harbour every single day if I wanted to. I don't. I do it once a week, but that's one of my favorite runs.
All right, that ends the visual conversation that I had with James. I'll just play a few key insights from race director Wayne Larden on the Sydney Marathons podcast with guest hosts Eloise Welling and Rory Darkins from Marathon State of Mind.
What will happen, and this is part of the vision and dream, will be you will see running lift to the top of the Australian sporting spectrum and calendar on that day from every year from then on, right? You will see the best runners in the world coming to Sydney every year. You will see those runners inspiring children, and not just children, but everyday people to take that step to become a marathon runner. You'll see a massive increase in participation. You'll see massive increases in visitation to Sydney. You'll see impacts in the hundreds of millions of dollars in economic value to the city and the state and Australia. You'll see commercial brands being involved and interested in the sport of athletics because of the Sydney Marathon and the visibility that it has and the engagement that it has with the people. And, it'll start to move into the realm of, what the ball sports have in this country, right? And they own the sporting sort of hierarchy and spectrum within this country, but we'll start to move towards that. So there'll be more money for, in the sport of athletics. There'll be more people inspired. There'll be more kids and adults running. The health of the nation should improve. We will raise a lot more money for charities. There's just so many positive benefits that will come from Sydney becoming an Abbott World Marathon major that will just be here forever. And that's what I really want to see materialize. And that's our from the day from last Sunday to next year's event. That's all we're thinking about.
Any final words for those people or people in general who, just want to stay connected to and a part of the vision of the Sydney Marathon?
Yeah, I mean, we want everyone to come back. We want to retain as many people who ran this year and add to it, because we got to make it through the semi-finals next year to get into the final, right? So, I want to thank everyone who ran this year, and it was extremely difficult conditions. Come back next year. We need you back, and we need to grow more. We want you to stay on the journey with us and help get the Sydney Marathon into that Olympic final, make it into the Abbott World Marathon Major. So bring a friend. There's more changes coming. The course will be different again next year. It'll be like a totally new route next year. So you've got something to look forward to.
You've made it to the end. Thank you so much for listening to all this stuff on how we try to make running and training and life and all that stuff work. Because time is a resource that no one can make more of. Not yet, at least. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen, watch, and generally consume all this stuff. Accessibility is pretty cool nowadays, so we have a transcript for all the episodes. Make sure you go to the show notes section of this episode on whatever podcast player you're listening to, or you can go to the description of the YouTube video, or just go to podcast.dlatecreates.com to find the episode and the transcript. All of this was produced in Sydney, Australia, so I acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. A lot of people ask how they can support us, and I think the easiest way is to just share this out to people you know that would like this. So whether it's a podcast link from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever you're listening to, or watching on YouTube, send them a link. Just flick it to them, email it, text it, Instagram, whatever. Send them a link of my this episode or my newsletter or whatever you can, the YouTube link, whatever you can. The second easiest way is to rate, like, or subscribe to this podcast and or video on YouTube, or even subscribe to my newsletter. If you have any feedback, feel free to hit me up. talk@dlatecreates.com. That's TALK@dlatecreates.com. Spelled the normal way. Train smart, race, and live easy. Peace.